Thank you so much. You can be seated. Everyone hear me all right? Hey, great to be with you guys this morning. I'm excited to bring the word. Is anyone excited for missions? Today we're talking about missions, Speed the Light, BGMC, our youth, our kids, the whole church giving to missions. Come on, give God some praise. I'm excited, and I hope you are excited for today. First, I want to say thank you to Pastor Keith, and I want to honor you. You know, today we wouldn't be, in 2021, we were the top missions giving church in South Dakota. We wouldn't have been there without Pastor Keith. You know, it's not normal for a pastor to give up a Sunday to his youth pastor to speak about youth and kids missions and the church missions, and even just missions in general. It's very rare for a pastor to do that. So Pastor Keith, thank you for doing that. I honor you today. And yeah, you can give it up, Pastor Keith. Come on. Before we get into Speed the Light, BGMC, first let's get into the Word. We're going to look at Matthew 14, verses 22 through 36. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone. And the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Verse 25, shortly after dawn, Jesus went down to them walking on the lake. It's not a normal thing. He's walking on water. And when the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said. They cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? Then they climbed into the boat, and the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. So basically this is an iconic story, right? Peter walking on water, one of the crazy miracles that Jesus does. And it's an iconic story. We know this story. And this is what I see happening. Basically, Jesus is walking on the lake. He's going towards the disciples. And Peter sees him, and he wants to be with Jesus. And he says, hey, tell me to come out and see you. If it's really you, tell me to come out. And Peter steps out of the boat and begins to walk on water. I mean, he had the faith to do that. He stepped out, and he did something wild. And then he began to doubt. And then he began to sink in the water. And Jesus caught him. As a loving father, he caught him and he picked him up. And so, whenever we hear this story, whenever we're reading the story, I'm compelled to have faith. I'm compelled that, man, if Peter could do this, if Peter had the faith enough to step out of the boat, what is God calling me to do? And we can have faith today because God is so faithful. God is always going to pick us up when we fall. God is always going to be right there with us. And so we can have faith today. And that's what missions is all about. And more than just giving today, more than, we're going to take an offering at the end, but more than that, I want God to speak to your heart and challenge you to take a step of faith. And more than that, faith and obedience combined together, that would be your heart. And so what is Speed the Light? Specifically, it's youth and kids initiated missions program, right? That supports missionaries around the world with much needed equipment like vehicles and different things like Bibles, music, computers. And this is, so BGMC, just so you know, BGMC is for the kids, so 5th grade and under, and then Speed the Light is for youth, 6th grade to 12th grade. I want to share a few stats from this last year. We've had an incredible year for missions giving across the nation. And so in 2021, students across the country gave $17.3 million to Speed the Light and $10 million for BGMC. That's across the nation, a record year for Speed the Light. I think the record before that was around $14 million and blew that out of the water. South Dakota in 2021 gave $80,000 to BGMC and $265,000 for Speed the Light. Also a record year. The cool thing today, BGMC is sitting 60% increase year to date, and Speed the Light is at a 41% increase from year to date. With where we're looking at and talking to district youth director, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be crazy for us to hit $500,000 for Next Gen Missions this year for South Dakota. That would be pretty incredible. And last year, our church, along with you guys and our kids and our youth, you guys helped raise $108,000 for these programs. That's pretty incredible. And in 2007, all of South Dakota gave $69,000 to Speed the Light. And that's all. And so in just a few years, there's been a lot of momentum in South Dakota, and our youth and kids are just getting fired up about this. This year, our youth and kids have already given over $25K to Speed the Light in BGMC this year. And our goal is $150,000 this year. And don't, you hear that goal and I think immediately you're like, oh, wow, that's a lot of money. And you probably just block me out and oh, I'm not going to do that. But this is a very small amount to God, who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. And it's not about a number. And I'm going to talk more specifics and what it's really about. But we know for God, this is no big thing. I want to read this quote. It says, "We dream so big that even when we fail, we've accomplished more than most would be willing to attempt." And I think that's our heart. I think that's our DNA, that we're not afraid to risk it all. We're not afraid to dream. We're not afraid to look foolish if we don't hit our goal and to go for something crazy, because we know it's not about us. It's not about what we can do on our own, but what could God do through us? What could God do if he got a hold of our hearts? What could he do? Think of it this way. A simple math solution would be, there's about 150 kids in our youth and kids programs combined, right? So that's about $1,000 for each kid and their family to raise, and that goal is met right there just overnight. Not saying that has to happen, but it could, just like that. And I want to say thank you so much for those who have given these past years to Speed Light and BGMC into our youth and kids programs. You guys, this has been all a unifying effort, so thank you so much. So why is it important, right? I'm talking about this, and you're like, what is BGMC and Speed Light? Why does it even matter? Let's just give a few dollars, call it good, Pete. Why does it really matter? What are the implications of this? And so, debatably, Speed the Light and BGMC is the most powerful discipleship tool that we have. And I've said this every year, and this is why. Number one, it creates unity within our church. When we're all giving to missions, when we're all hearing God's heart, when we're all giving to the same thing, that's powerful, then we're going together. Number two, it teaches radical generosity. Today's offering is above and beyond. It's not the tithe. And so if you're not tithing today, I would encourage you, tithe before you give to BGMC or Speed the Light. But it teaches radical generosity, not just tithing. We teach kids tithing in the 10%, but it goes above and beyond. That, hey, I'm not just going to give God what he tells me to give, but I'm going to be radically generous so that people around the world can know Jesus. And I'm going to give my whole heart. Number three, it teaches them to live selflessly. Think of others more than themselves. We all know this. It's easy for us to be selfish. It's easy for us to think about our own needs. We wake up thinking, oh, what could I do? What do I need to do? What do I need to do today? What do I need to buy? What do I need to get done? It's so easy to focus on ourselves. We're teaching the next generation to focus on others and those around them that are in desperate need for God, desperate need for water and food that we take for granted every day. Number four, it grows our faith. It grows students' faith when they pray and say, God, would you want me to give to Speed Light or BGMC? And they pray, and then maybe God gives them a number, and they say, okay, Mom, Dad, I'm going for this goal. And then they help them, and they hit this goal, right? And it builds their faith. But more than that, it also challenges our faith. And the adults in the room, you parents in the room, when your kid comes to you and says, hey, I feel God's telling me to raise $1,000, you're like, nope, that's not right. Or you didn't hear from God. Be careful, right? We got to be careful. We got to be open and say, God, okay, let's pray. Your kids come to you. Don't just, it'll be in the natural response, just be like, nope, that's not right. But just encourage them and pray with them. Say, hey, let's pray. Let's say, God, what do you want us to do? And there's been families that have done that and raised over $5,000, over $10,000 just because they said a simple prayer. Because their kid came home and they didn't shut them down, but they said, okay, we're going to say a simple prayer. God, what do you want us to do? How do you want us to do this? So number five, we are raising up missionaries, and it starts when they're kids. It's so important. We're going to talk more about missionaries, but it's so vital that we're sending missionaries all around the globe that need to hear, so people can hear about Jesus. It starts when they're kids. It starts when they begin right now, even in kids' church. I've been down there several weeks. It's so incredible. It's the same Holy Spirit down there that's up here. It's not a baby Holy Spirit. God, the Holy Spirit baptizes kids when they're just little kids. Like, God does miracles through these little kids. And it's not because they're open to it, right? We get old and we're like, we're too smart for God. We know too much. These kids have a heart, and it starts now by them having a heart for missions. So maybe you're listening to this and you're like, Pete, I already give to missionaries, I already give to missions. Speed Light BGMC is cool, but it's not that important. This is what you're really saying, and I'm not trying to be too harsh, but I feel like this is what you need to hear. It's okay. This is what you're saying if you say you don't need to give to these things, or they don't really matter. That's what you're saying. It's okay if the next generation fails to get God's heart for missions. It's okay. It's okay if we don't have unity within our missional giving as a church. Adults are giving. We're giving awesome numbers. We don't need the kids to give. Number 3, it's okay that we don't currently have enough missionaries going around the world, and that number will just slowly decrease over time if the next generation doesn't get God's heart for missions. It's okay. I just encourage you, please consider praying and saying, God, how could we partner with Speed Light and BGMC? How could we be all in? Because these programs are helping students to be all in for Jesus at a young age and beginning to hear God's voice, beginning to activate their faith, and for them to have a heart for people in their school and those across the world. So the money we're raising today for BGMC and Speed the Light is going to go to World Serve that provides clean water all across the globe. An estimated 790 million people are living without access to clean drinking water in the world. That's 2 times the population of the United States. Women and children spend an estimated 200 million hours daily collecting contaminated and unsafe water. Worse than that, we find in our toilets. We urinate in cleaner water than many people around the world drink. This isn't a water bottle from Walmart. Okay, it is, but I put don't drink on here because I didn't want Pastor Keith to take this and drink it because it came from my toilet this morning. But I kept it hidden from Pastor Keith. But don't drink, although it gets dark back there. But look, you couldn't tell a difference. You couldn't tell difference. And I put this don't drink because I might take a drink on accident. So, it's just our clean tap water, and people would die for this water. They would give anything for this water. There are 2,000 child deaths per day due to waterborne illnesses. There's also dramatic lack of education, equity for women, medical care, spiritual growth, economic development in areas facing this crisis. Basically, when you don't have water, it leads to a lot of other problems. Like you're dying physically, but it leads to all these issues because you can't make food, and agriculture it affects all these issues. And this isn't just happening on the other side of the globe or a different continent than ours. The Navajo Nation is located just southwest region of the United States, parts of New Mexico, Utah, Arizona. It's geographically the largest reservation in the United States. 35% of the Navajo Nation citizens are without running water in their homes. Basically, more than 40% of these families are hauling water in. Okay? They face challenges rivaling those we typically see, like in Africa or India. And Speed the Light and BGMC, along with World Serve International, is committed to helping meet this profound need across the globe. And this isn't just a humanitarian need. Nathaniel's going to share a little bit later, too, about more of what they do. But when they go in Africa and they plant a water well, they often will plant a church right there as well. And then these people get, fresh water, but they get the living water, and they come to know Jesus, and it changes a community. They see the big picture. They're not just going for the quick fix they're not just a humanitarian thing. They partner with Speed the Light because they care about leading people to Jesus. So are we willing to step out of the boat so others can have clean water and hear about Jesus? Are we willing to be a little uncomfortable? Are we willing to take a step of faith, take a step that's a little scary? I know our youth and kids are. I got to go quick, but this last August, we had a 5-gallon 5K where basically you're carrying a 5-gallon bucket of water with a lid for 3.2 miles. And it was it was not easy. I'm not as strong as Wyatt over here. And my back, like lap 2, my back's like giving out. I'm like, oh, this is tough. And here, this girl in front of me is just not stopping. She just keeps going. And she's one of my students, Lily Knott, my high school, and she's in high school. And she weighs like, I don't even know what she weighs, but not very much. You can see her with the bag on the right, okay? And different people could carry different ways. They could use backpacks. A lot of people use like hiking backpacks. I just had like a bucket like that. But man, she did not quit. She just kept going and going. And I'm like, oh man, I got to keep up with her. And so I made sure that Lily did not beat me. It wasn't easy though. You know, we have students, Nicholas gave $1,000 to Speed the Light this last year just by working at McDonald's. This year, he was telling us yesterday that his goal was $2,000. And then we had a luncheon with the National Speed Light Director yesterday and Tyler Tufter, our District Youth Director. Sorry, a lot of words, different names. But basically, he was telling Eric this, and Eric said, hey, how about you go for 4? And if you hit 4, I'll send you an autographed Myles Garrett football and jersey. If you don't know Myles Garrett, he plays defensive end for the Cleveland Browns. Okay, he'll one day be a Hall of Famer, whether you like him or not, probably. Not saying. The cool thing, Myles Garrett gives to Speed the Light, and he donated these jerseys to give to students that are giving to Speed the Light. And so it was so cool just seeing their faith activated and growing. Balin's selling shirts in the lobby. His Armor of God shirts, he's almost raised over $800, and he's selling those in the lobby if you want to support him. Getting to the kids. Our kids have been doing a Boys vs. Girls challenge. I was down there last week and seeing them excited about giving and the girls wanting to beat the guys and just a lot of fun. You've probably seen the pink flamingos around and the bidding battles going on. You can be thankful that war is over, all right? For now, that battle is over for now. But some of the cool stories that our kids, we have kids that are in 4th and 5th grade getting called to be missionaries. Easton is a 5th grader at Camp feeling called to be a missionary already. McKinley, last year, she ran laps around the track for 30 minutes and raised over $1,500 for missions because people see her heart. Easton and Ellie, they did a lemonade stand together this summer, raised money for BGMC. Nehemiah and Zamira, every week they'll bring their little buddy barrels for missions and drop those coins from the chores that they do each week. Tatum, Zeke, Easton, Liv, our kids who all have prayed for a different country during service and prayed for different missionaries and prayed for those people for people to come to know Jesus and almost brought Ariana to tears each week, and she was really impressed by them. Tatum volunteered to pray for Iran during our World Traveler event. We had a World Traveler event that Pastor Ariana put on, just super cool event. Basically, students and kids would go to different rooms and experience a little bit of the culture of that room. Maybe they'd go to China. Me and Taylor did China, and they'd come in and maybe get a taste of China or just to find out a little bit about the culture. What would it be like living there? And Ariana did a great job setting that up. And Tatum is praying for the persecuted church in Iran at this event. And it brought Madison to tears. Like just hearing that 6-year-old praying for the persecuted church, wow. And these students aren't just willing to pray, they're willing to give so many people across the globe can know Jesus. And that maybe one day they would even go. Do you see the connection? It's not just about dollars. It's not just about a dumb goal. It's not just about, we're number 1. That doesn't matter. But it's about raising up the next generation to have God's heart for the nations, that they would even be willing to go. Yes. It starts right now when they're young. And I'm not saying that God can't move on your heart as well. Each one of us can play a part in this, even if it's small. We all have an opportunity to make an impact. We're talking this weekend, again, we had this little retreat, and missionaries were speaking, and Pastor Eric and Pastor Tyler, and what I kept hearing was just this urgency to preach the gospel, this urgency to take the gospel everywhere that people would know, even in Rapid City, even to our next door neighbors, that, we should be telling people about Jesus everywhere we go. How beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news, Romans 10:15. You don't got to go overseas to do that. Okay, you can go to Walmart and see plenty of need. So the question is, how can you step out of the boat? The first thing is you can pray. You can ask God, Holy Spirit, what do you want me to do? How could you use me? Number 2, you can go and share the gospel. It's the greatest opportunity we have is to share the gospel, to tell others about Jesus. It's our greatest mission. Our greatest mission is to reach the lost. Some of you in the room are hearing that, and I know some of you are called to go. Like some of you are going to go somewhere overseas. And even as I'm saying that, your heart's like beating, and you're like, oh man, that's me. And it might not be tomorrow, but you know they're going to go. But many of us might not go overseas, but we're still called to love our neighbor, to love those around us that are hurting and broken and need Jesus. The last thing you can do is give. You can ask God and be obedient. Just ask. Say, God, what would you have me give? And then be obedient to that, because he'll honor that. He'll bless that. Don't be afraid to give sacrificially. But remember that this is above and beyond the tithe. And so if you give today, mark Speed the Light or BGMC on the memo online or in your check. But don't, if you're not tithing, I'd encourage you to tithe first and then think about giving above and beyond. So today I'm challenging you as I close, I'm wrapping it up. I'm going to invite some people up in just a moment. But I'm challenging you to step out of the boat. I'm challenging you to take a step. Just be a little risky with your faith. Like, test God in this. Step out and be faithful. Don't rely on what you see. Don't rely on what you know. But say, God, if Peter can walk on water, and we know that usually by gravity we're going to sink in the water. If Peter can do that miracle, if Jesus can do all these miracles, maybe he can use me to impact the world. So today as I end the service, I have a special family that's going to come up and share their heart. This is a family that they've been pastors for years. They've impacted the next generation. They've given a lot of money to Speed the Light sacrificially. They've led many students on missions trips across the globe. Incredible hearts. They've challenged my faith. And today I want you to give it up. I want you to stand to your feet as we welcome Janae and Nathaniel, missionaries.
Good morning, Bethel Church. It is an honor to be with you all this morning. We are Nathaniel and Janae Mullen. We're missionaries, your missionaries to French Polynesia. We're South Dakotans and fellow Rapid Cityans. We were just from across the city. We were youth pastors. Actually, we were youth pastors with Pastor Keith back in the day. Thank you, Pastor Keith, for giving us this opportunity to share today what God's placed in our hearts. And we do recognize today's National Speed the Light Sunday, and it's a special Sunday in our hearts too. Like I said, we've been youth pastors for the last 10 years, and we're so grateful that we get to be in this beautiful part of the country, beautiful part of the state. It's been our honor to work alongside Pastor Pete and Taylor. Man, you just sense his heart. You sense his heart and his passion for what he's talking about today. This is what he bleeds. In fact, we love across the state. I don't know if you know this, but across the state, all the Assemblies of God churches have been challenged to give more than they ever have because of him. Because of their vision for the state. It was our record giving year this last year, the best year we've ever given to Speed the Light. And we're just so excited that he's placed right here in this church for such a time as this. We've always had such a heart for missions, like Pastor Pete said. And as youth pastors, every year we would go to our National Fine Arts. It travels all over. Last year was in Orlando. I know you guys go to National Fine Arts, and your groups always go. I see some familiar faces that have gone on those trips. And every year we would respond, God, you have our yes. God, we want to serve in mission someday. Is now the time? We're not looking to leave, but we just have a heart for it. We know that God is going to call us to mission someday.
We were at National Fine Arts, and a missionary by the name of Brian Webb was speaking. And you guys may remember his face. He's actually been here at your church before, because the money that you guys raised for Reagan Newhouse and her team, he came to receive the keys from you when you guys raised that money through Speed the Light. He's the area director in the area of the world where Reagan is going. And so at National Fine Arts in August of 2021, we really felt God call us to be missionaries to this same area of the world where Reagan is going. We're not going to the same country country as her, but we'll be in the islands there with her. And it has been the hardest thing that we have ever done. We always thought that we were going to go somewhere in Latin America. We speak a decent amount of Spanish. This is so far outside of anything we ever thought God had for our life. And then, of course, just selling everything we own, leaving everyone that we love behind to go to a place that at this time, a year ago, we didn't even know existed. We had no idea. And so God definitely has been challenging us, like Pastor Pete challenged you this morning, to step out of the boat and live by faith and obedience. That's been the journey that we've walked for this last year, but God has been so faithful.
So since May, we've been traveling and speaking in churches every Sunday and some weekdays and concerts like we had last night. This is made up of churches who commit support us monthly and give us a cash offering. And so right now we're sitting at about 37% of our monthly and about 70% of our cash, and people have given us various amounts on a monthly basis. And it's been awesome to see how faithful God's been.
As we were scheduling our Sundays and we found out that we were going to be here with you guys this Sunday, we knew it wasn't an accident. We knew that God had a divine plan this morning for us to be here as Pastor Pete preached on Speed the Light Sunday. And so we told him we don't want a cash offering. We don't want this to be about us at all. We want to come alongside Pastor Pete and Pastor Keith and their vision for your church and what you guys are doing for missions. And so this morning, if you are interested in partnering with us in prayer or hearing more about our journey, we'll be at our table afterwards in the back, and you can feel free to come in. We'd love to share that with you. There's a QR code on the screen. You can visit our website and find out more about us. But this morning, we don't want this to be about us. We believe in Speed the Light and BGMC, and that's what we want the focus to be on this morning.
You see, Speed the Light really is kind of a big part of the reason why we're standing up here today. It was when we began to give God more and more, and we gave sacrificially more and more of our heart turned towards missions. And exactly when that moment happened, that's when God released us into missions. And when our students learn to give sacrificially, God breaks their hearts and calls them to reach the lost. I really think that's why BGMC and Speed the Light is so important, is because it sends people out to do the mission of God. We believe as students give to Speed the Light and BGMC, they open up their hearts in a new way for God to call them to the nations.
So if Speed the Light is for youth and if BGMC is for kids, then why as adults, why do we need to get behind it? Why do we need to give? Your students need to know that you believe in them. And when you give to them, to Speed the Light and to BGMC, it encourages them more than you'll ever understand or you'll ever know. When you give to Speed the Light and BGMC, not just are you equipping missionaries around the world with the tools that they need to spread the gospel, you're also teaching the next generation the generosity and the sacrifice that's necessary to make a difference, to reach the lost. You're teaching them God's heart for missions. You're helping bring unity within your church in missional giving, and you're helping the next generation to catch God's heart for the lost so that they can be positioned to answer the call to go to the nations.
Every chance we have, we give people this challenge. Does God have your yes? Last August in 2021, before we left for our youth group at National Fine Arts, when this whole journey began, we shared the following passage to our students in Mark 8:34 through 37. It says this: "Then he called the crowd to him along with the disciples and said, 'If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for me, for the gospel, will save it. What good is it for a man to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul?'"
I challenged our students that week. I read from the commentary of my Bible, and it said, to deny self means to put aside our own selfish desires in order to follow Christ and serve his purposes, regardless of the cost. A follower of Christ who takes up their cross is making a deliberate choice to deny their own selfish interests and way of life. And in my mind, I was already doing that. We were in ministry for 10 years. I was sold out for God. We'd been faithfully serving him. But the truth of the matter is I had no idea what it meant to take up my cross and follow him. In that moment, God wasn't just challenging our students to pick up their crosses. He was challenging us. It would be 4 short days later when we would hear Brian Webb speak, and God would say, "Do I really have your yes? Will you follow me into the unknown? Will you trust me with all that you are?"
And as we said earlier, we've always known we've been called to missions. Someday, we always said yes to God. Yes, God, we'll go. Yes, God, you have our heart. Yes, God, you have our lives.
But this particular yes has been by far the hardest thing that we've ever done. Selling everything we own, leaving everybody we know behind, saying goodbye to everyone that we love, all to go to a place that we didn't even know existed. Verse 36 says, what good is it for somebody to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? And, I wasn't forfeiting my soul. We were sold out for God. We were loving him. We were discipling students. But I didn't realize how focused I had become on trying to gain the whole world. After God called us, I cried from like August until March. I didn't want to leave. If I'm being perfectly honest, I still don't fully want to leave. We had a great life. We loved our jobs. Our kids were in Christian school. We had just bought a new house. Everything was so easy. And I didn't realize it, but my life had become focused on gaining the whole world. God has taught me through all of this that this life is not our own. My life is not my own. Eternity is far too long for me to make this life about myself and my goals and my dreams and my desires. When we announced that we were leaving to our students earlier this year, it was so hard, and they all cried and they clung to me and they begged me not to go. And with tears in my eyes, I looked at them and I said, I love you so much, but I have to go. If I don't go, there's people who are dying and they're going to hell, and who is going to tell them if I don't go?
In the words of Brian Webb, our boss and Reagan Newhouse's boss, our area director, Christ did not call us to live our best lives now. He called us to come and die and experience our best lives in eternity.
So this morning, we want to challenge you guys like we challenged our youth and like God has challenged us. Just like God has challenged Nathaniel and I. We aren't anything special. We hope that you don't go away from this morning looking at us. It's not about us, it's about God. All we're doing is being obedient to what he's called us to do. So this morning, we want to ask you, what is God calling you to do? Where is he calling you to go? How much is he calling you to give? He might not be calling you in the same way he called us. He might not be calling you to sell everything and move to the middle of the ocean to a place you've never even heard of.
But he's absolutely still called you to go. He's calling you to pick up your cross and deny yourself and follow him. He's calling you to stop trying to gain the whole world. He's calling you to stop forfeiting your soul. He's calling you to give him your yes. He's calling you to step out of the boat and walk by faith and obedience.
He has placed you in your job, in your school, in your neighborhood, in your family for such a time as this, because the people there need to know him. Eternity is far too long for us to continue to be content to live our best lives here and not spread the gospel. This life is not about us. It's not about living our best lives here. It's about loving God and loving people and rescuing them from an eternity in hell.
So today we want to just encourage you. Could God be calling you to go? Take some time to ask him today. Before you leave this room, ask him, God, are you calling me to go? And if he's not calling you to go overseas, he's absolutely calling you to, and he's still calling you right now. God has a purpose for each one of you. God has a purpose here in Rapid City. God has a purpose for this church. He wants to use you in a mighty way to further his kingdom. So if God isn't calling you to go somewhere as a missionary, he's calling you to go here. Go to your coworkers, go to your neighbors, go to your classmates, go to your family, go get behind Pastor Keith and Pastor Pete's vision and help them reach this city and this region for Jesus.
The people in Rapid City, they need Jesus just as bad as the people in French Polynesia. And it's not Pastor Keith's job. It's not Pastor Pete's job. It's not their job to tell them. It's each of ours. It's each of yours. It takes every single one of us giving God our yes for the Great Commission to happen.
So let's get behind. You see 150,000. That, like Pastor Pete said, that's nothing compared to what God's resources has for us. Let's get behind that. What sacrifices can we make to make that happen? What can we sell? What can we give up? Isn't it worth it so that people in the Navajo Nation can hear about Jesus, maybe for the first time? Maybe they've never been reached. Nobody's ever gone. Maybe they haven't had the resources and the clean water. I reached out to Eric Hoffman, our National Speed the Light Director, yesterday, and I asked him, hey, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing here? Where is this money really going? And he said, World Serve is in the process right now of building these community centers and strategic locations right by where these water wells will happen. The plan is to build a community center and provide things like a church. It'll provide things like the community, what they need, business opportunities for them. They also want to buy their own drilling rig and have their first ever Navajo Nation-based drilling crew. So it provides jobs for them, but it also continues to provide the clean water that they need so desperately. Of the 7 million Native Americans in our country, only 3% profess Christianity. What could happen if we just provided clean water, that we could bring the living water, like Pastor Pete said, to this country, that this nation of Native Americans? The money that you give is changing eternity. Today, we want to challenge you to get out of the boat and start walking in obedience and faith and give God your yes. Pastor Keith.